Rambam and others, the Omer connects Pesach with Shavuos, right? In fact, I think it's the Rambam, I'm not sure, I think it's the Rambam that says that it's like Chol Hamoed. That, obviously not halachic restrictions of Chol Hamoed, but the idea of being like between two festivals, and the two festivals are really essentially one, and the Omer is like the connecting idea, right? And the reason for that is because really we know that the whole goal of Pesach was Shavuos. In other words, Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu at the burning bush, he said, "When you take the Jewish people out of Egypt, you'll serve me on this mountain," right? So it's really one continuation. The Chinuch, the Sefer Chinuch and the Rambam also has an idea that the whole idea was the Yidden were counting with such anticipation. Chavivus, that was precious for them when they were counting, like someone counts down to a loved one coming on the gas, they were counting down to become Hashem's nation at Matan Torah. Okay. So I wanted to have a look at the whole mitzvah of first Omer and how that connects to Matan Torah.
Can I just confirm? Yeah. You have to count after 3 stars.
Yeah.
Because on my app it tells me to count before there's 3 stars.
So it depends which 3 stars. I can't look at the maps out my phone's been that. But what do you mean by 3? It depends. There's different. So 3 stars are called Tzeis HaKachavim, but there's different opinions where it says HaKachavim is. So it could be it's giving you a more lenient opinion.
Okay, but perhaps that's what it is. Because when it pings to count, the Chabad one, the Chabad.
Yeah, it's giving you the more lenient Tzeis HaKachavim. Right? And where do you know that? How do you know it's not 3 stars yet?
Because it's not when I say Havdalah typically.
Yeah. Okay, good. Because the Shabbos. Okay, so the Shabbos one. So the Shabbos. It's an interesting question you're asking. The Shabbos 3 stars. Which I guess you look at the calendar and you see what Motzei Shabbos is, right?
Yeah.
Number one, that's a stricter Tzeis HaKachavim because it's 2 opinions. And because it's Shabbos and Shabbos is biblical, it's so strict, therefore we go with the stricter one. Mm-hmm. It's about, it's a difference between 10-15 minutes, something like that.
Not even, I think, yeah.
Yeah, maybe even like 10 more. And also, Shabbos we add a few minutes because the mitzvah to add to Shabbos, just like you light candles before the sunset, you also take out Shabbos a few minutes late. So already it's built into the calendar time, so it means a few minutes really after Tzeis HaKachavim.
Oh, okay, good.
So, but Sfiras Omer number 1, Sfiras Omer, according to most opinions nowadays, is actually a rabbinic mitzvah because we don't have the korban on, we don't have the flower of the Omer, right? And that's where you can be a bit more lenient and gives you the basic time. So that's fine. It's always good to count when you hear the ping, otherwise
that's right. And also because I'm conscious because you can't eat or drink.
You can drink.
Oh, you can drink? Oh.
You can drink and you eat a fruit or something like that, you just can't eat properly.
And should I really do Ma'ariv before I count?
No. If you don't normally have Ma'ariv, which most women don't.
I normally say the Shema.
Okay, no, Shema you should say it now, but I'm saying there's the Amidah Ma'ariv.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, a lot of women daven Shachris and Milchah, but don't have Ma'ariv.
Yeah.
You know the background to that because the Ma'ariv is really optional. It used to be optional. Men took it on afterwards as an obligation, so it became obligatory, but women didn't, and therefore it remains optional, remains non-obligatory. But the Omer and Ma'ariv are actually 2 separate things completely. Even in Shulchan Aruch, it's brought down that if someone's in Shul, man in Shul, that right, for whatever reason, he's not going to be able to daven Ma'ariv until much later, he's worried he's going to forget the Omer, he can count before Ma'ariv. Mm-hmm. We don't normally do that, we normally count after Ma'ariv, but it doesn't, it's not really Ma'ariv, you can just count. Can't really hear the ping. Okay. So let's have a look at number 1 in the handout. Right. So the pasuk says like this. Language is very important. It says, "Usvartem lochem." You should count for yourself. B'mocharas haShabbos, the day after Shabbos, which is b'yom havi'achem es omer atznufa, for the day you bring the woven korban, the flour offering. Sheva Shabbosos Tenumois Tehiyah. 7 complete weeks. Right? Now, what does that mean? The day after Shabbos is first of all referring to the second day of Pesach. Now, obviously, we're talking about in Eretz Yisrael. Let's show first Yom Tov, the first day of Pesach, only one day Yom Tov, right? That's the 15th of Nisan. The Torah then says, at the end of that day, they would go into the field, they would harvest barley, and then the next day they would bring a mincha, a flour offering from the barley, and you should count 7 weeks from the day after Shabbos. Now obviously and by the way, this is a very interesting expression because the day after Shabbos not means Shabbos, it means Yom Tov. And in the Gemara it talks about, maybe we went through this before, but I think the one Pasha went through this, but this created a huge debate in history. In the time of the Sadducees, the people didn't believe in Torah Shabbat Peh, only Torah Shabbat Tzad, and the whole business, they always only started from Motzei Shabbos, whenever the first Shabbos was, and therefore they always had Shavuos on a Sunday. That was the thing, right? But we know through Torah Shabbat Peh that doesn't mean that. It means the day after Yom Tov, and that's it. Now, the obvious question is, it's great, but why did Hashem choose a language that was going to cause such a problem? Right? What should I say? He could have said B'chor Asam Pesach or B'chor Asam Moed, or whatever the case is, right? Okay, so we need to leave that. We'll see it there. Now, also the interesting phrase is Usafartem Lachem. You must count for you. What does that mean for you? So halachically, there's a whole discussion about this that the Omer, when you count the Omer, you can't be yoitz from someone else. Like a lot of things that we say, you can listen to someone else and just be yoitz around the kiddush or these things. But the Omer now Lachem, it's got to be you. It's an individual mitzvah. Also, to exclude, there's another counting in the Torah, and that is when you have the Shemitah, right, this medical year, then it says you've got to count 7 Shemitahs. And the 50th year is the Jubilee year, and that's what we call the Yovel, right? And there it's also a mitzvah to count, it's not a mitzvah to count on individuals, it's a mitzvah to count, the basis has to count. And then at the end they have to declare the Jubilee year. Here it means Lachem, it's an individual mitzvah. We'll see in Chassidus is a deeper, there's a more not mystical, sort of deeper idea, that the word was Sephartim, comes from the word, what does Sephartim mean? Sephartim means to count, but also Sephartim means to brighten, to make a light, right? And the word sapir, which is a bright stone. And Sephartim Lachem, so this explains, means you shall brighten the you. You shall brighten yourself through the process of counting Lachem. Okay, what does all that mean? So, let's go, to understand this, let's go to a pasuk in number 2. The pasuk is in Shir HaShirim. Shir HaShirim is the Song of Songs written by King Solomon, King Shlomo HaMelech. Very much describes the relationship between the Jewish people and Hashem, and very much is based on the whole story of Pesach, Pesach and ultimately Shavuos, right? So it says there, it's the Jewish people talking, because in Shir HaShirim, actually, if you study, it's quite hard to know who's talking. It's a dialogue between Hashem and the Jewish people, and it's not always clear who's talking, but yeah. This is clear, this is the Jewish people talking, and they say like this. Moshcheni, they say to Hashem, you draw me, right? Number 1. Then they say, Acharecha norutza, after you we will run, right? And then, Havi'ani hamelech chadora, the king brought me to his chamber, Nagila v'nismacha bach, we will rejoice, we will be happy and rejoice bach with you. Okay, and then it continues on, but let's just have one of us. So what does that mean? We actually see 3 things here, right? The Jewish people are saying to Hashem, Moshcheni, draw me, Acharecha narut, so after you we will run, that's the second thing. And then the king brought me to his chambers, right? So, first of all, Moshcheni, draw me, is in the singular, right? Acharecha narutza is in plural. So, why is it inconsistent? Yeah. And Avi'ani melech chadora, what's this about? What's the third thing? The king bringing me into his chamber. Okay. So in order to understand this, we have to understand the whole process of Pesach and how it will work. So in Chassidus, one of the concepts that's all based on is this pasuk of how we found that the Yid went out of Mitzrayim. It says, number 3, it says, Vayugad v'melech Mitzrayim, and it was told to the king of Egypt, Ki barach ha'am, that the nation had fled. Right? This is, I'll tell you, we'll just give you context. This is the Chumash where after the Jews leave, and then they don't come, obviously they leave, they come back, they come to the Yam Suf, and then Paro gets wind of it, and then he chases them, and he meets up with them at the sea, and then the sea splits, and he drowns, so his nation drowns, right? He doesn't actually drown, he was actually killed.
becomes king of Nineveh.
Nineveh, exactly. But the language is interesting. He was told that they fled. Now they didn't flee. He kicked them out. I mean, with strong recommendation from the place, but he was one told to go. It doesn't mean they fled. Secondly, this idea of fleeing Mitzrayim, actually, we do find this as a bit of a theme. Because even Hashem told the Jewish people, when they eat the korban pesach the night before they leave, they have to eat it b'chipos, they have to eat it in haste, right? So it says your belt has to be girded, your shoes have to be on your feet, your stick on the stick on your hand, all ready to go. And then ultimately when they did leave, they didn't leave till the next morning, that was by design. Hashem didn't want them to leave in the middle of the night. He wanted them to leave publicly so that everyone should see that they're leaving, even though they didn't steal away, they actually left with great pride. They still left in a rush, which is of course the whole basis of matzah, right? Where they baked bread, they didn't have time to rise, and the whole story, therefore the whole thing was b'chipasa, they were there in a rush. We also know that Mashiach comes and says it won't be b'chipasa, we're not going to go out the rush. There's a pasuk that says, you won't leave Golos in a rush. You'll go slowly, you'll walk. Right? So what's the difference? See, here's what happens, right? This is the whole idea. And we'll try to go back to what was the goals and so that. So we have what's called a nefesh al-kis and a nefesh al-babis, right? As well. Go into the depth in Tanya already. And the nefesh al-kis also is godly. Now nefesh al-kis can't really be impurified, but it could be captured, it could be in golos, meaning nefesh al-kis could be in a state where it's unable to express itself, right? Okay. But it's essentially holy, it's essentially godly, right? Nefesh al-babis is not like that. Nefesh al-babis is klippa, right? It's klippa. As we explained many times at Tanya Shurim, it's klippa right from the start, actually. Even before it's done anything wrong, it's klippa because it conceals godliness. And therefore it is a force that tempts us to indulge in egocentricity, in temptation, in gashmias, in worldliness, and so on and so forth, right? And by extension, so that's nefesh al-babis within the person. By extension, the world has both. The world has godly sparks and sometimes godly connection, but also has tumah, has ra, has bad, right? It's good and evil in the world. One of the things that we say about Yetzias Mitzrayim is that it didn't affect the nefesh al-babis at all. It only affected the nefesh al-babis. Meaning, bad, yeshus, klippa, was still alive and well. And therefore, it was something that you had to run away from.
That's why you have to rush.
Huh?
That's why you have to rush.
Right. You gotta run away from it. Now, I'll explain why it is Mitzrayim was for nefesh al-kis, but it's what it means is that the Eden went out of Golos, but they essentially had not changed. Their personality hadn't changed, right?
They were at that 49th level of
Tumah, yeah, exactly. And it took 49 days to get out of that, which we'll see why that happens. But essentially, something huge did happen. Something huge absolutely happened. It was an internal geula, it was an internal redemption from nefesh al-kis. The Maral talks about this. He says that even though we find that there were other goals, the Maral asks this question: how can we celebrate Pesach if afterwards there was another goals, right? It means it wasn't right. We know it's not the ultimate goal anyway, but he says, what's the big deal about Pesach? He says Pesach was huge. Why is it huge? Because something happened in Pesach that can never be taken away. Before that, everything was in goals, both the guf and the neshama. Right? Whereas by Mitzrayim, the ability for the neshama to express itself was removed. It was the concept of inner freedom, spiritual freedom was given to us. Now, the Friedrich Rebbe said this in the name of the Rebbe Rashab. You know the story. The Friedrich Rebbe, when he came out of jail, in the whole story of Beis Tammuz, right? But not Beis Tammuz, when he came out of jail, he was sent to exile. You know the story? He was sent to exile first. So in 1927, the Friedrich Rebbe was in prison for spiritual Yiddishkeit. He was then released on Gimel Tammuz, and he was, I don't know if you look at Gimel Tammuz, it's different about but it was Gimel Tammuz. And then he was going to be sentenced to exile for like 9 years or something, or 11 years. It was reduced to 3 years, then it was reduced to 12 days, and 10 days, and then 10 days later he was released on the case. That was miraculous. But what he did was, the figure was a man of tremendous mysterious nefesh, and was willing to take risks and sacrifice his life to show the strength of Yiddishkeit. So on the way, he was allowed to go home for a few hours, and then he went to Kastrama, on this far-flung place, but he went on through a train, and by the train station, and the Chassidim, at risk their lives actually, came out en masse to see him and to welcome him. And what he did was, knowing that there was the KGB there, knowing that there were informants there, he stopped at the station, he got up and he said, a sikha. Quite a defiant sikha. And one of the things he said, the Rebbe Rashab said, that our neshamas never went into Golos. Only our guf. In other words, since it's Mitzrayim, the neshama cannot go into Golos. Therefore, Yid can be in the worst places, and his neshama can still express itself. Physically and spiritually, the neshama can always be united, right? So that's what he said. And he said that's why we have to be strong with the Yiddishkeit, because the neshama is knowing Golos. Just an interesting thing, just a side thing. It's a nice word from the Ishbitzer Rebbe. He has a Haggadah. Explains why it's such an emphasis on eating an egg on the Seder. Do I have an experiment?
No.
I always say, especially the South Africans, they were educated in South Africa, like eating an egg on Pesach night, it's like hearing shofar or something. It's like wow, it's the way the people is just, even though it's really optional. But there's a way of eating an egg, or put an egg on a Seder plate and then eat it by the thing. He says a beautiful idea. He says because the ullah from Israel was very much like an egg, huh? So what's an egg? Egg hatches, right? An egg hatches, it's a complete thing, meaning it's ready to eat. You can make fried egg, you can eat it, you can celebrate, you can enjoy it, whatever. But in truth, it's incomplete because the purpose of an egg really is to hatch into a chicken, right? See, that's exactly what happened with Israel. The didn't came out of Golos, that was a gula. It was a gula. And like one of my rabbis before was an eternal gula. Like no one can ever affect the Shabbat after that. But it's not the tachlis. The tachlis is the chicken. The tachlis is the gula of Mashiach, right? So it's like an egg. Okay. Back to this. What does that mean? It means like this. In general, there's something called in Chassidus isarusa de la'ela, and then isarusa de la'tata. There's the awakening that comes from above, the awakening that comes from below, right? When there's an awakening from above, Chassidus explains. The whole mind of the Alter Rebbe, the famous mind of Yikra. About how the Apostle at the beginning of Yikra talks about Korbanos, how it works, right? When Hashem sends an awakening from above, He doesn't talk to the Nefesh Abbas. Because the Nefesh Abbas is resistant to any awakening. It does talk to the Nefesh Abbas, right? It talks to the Nefesh Abbas because the Nefesh Abbas always wants to be inspired. And then when there's sometimes something amazing happens and awakens the person, so what part of the person is awakened? The Nefesh Elokis. Because the Nefesh Elokis sort of is energized. Therefore now can express itself and it's able to. But that's the good news. But the problematic news is it doesn't affect Nefesh Elokis at all. Which means it doesn't actually change the person, right? Which is why, it says in the tutorial, which is why we find that people can be often very, very, very much aroused spiritually, and then dissipates after a while. Why? Because the person hasn't changed. Right? Who's the person? Again, the consciousness of the person, which is the nefesh hamak, it's not the nefesh hamak, right? Personality of the person's value, whatever, nothing's changed. It's just the nefesh hamak has empowered itself, so temporarily it wins the war. But the enemy's still there. The big bad bully of the nefesh hamak is still there, so therefore he can make a strong comeback, right? That's why when the Yidden went out on the strike, they weren't, the whole thing was an Isrusa Delayla, it was meant from above. They didn't deserve the whole thing, right? Hashem took them out because he promised to help Yaakov and he saw potential and so on, but they weren't changed at all. Okay. Now, a second thing we have to understand is, so what has to happen? The second part of the process is the Nefesh Abamis has to change. And that Hashem can't do for us. Not can't do anything, but doesn't want to do for us, right? Because he created a resistant being within us, and the purpose of that is for us to change that being. If he would do it, he doesn't have to create us in the first place, right? So the process is, he gives an awakening. The awakening doesn't talk to Nefesh Abamis, because Nefesh Abamis is resistant, and Hashem is not going to do anything about it. He could transform Nefesh Abamis, but he's not going to. Because Nefesh Abamis has to change himself. That's the whole purpose of creation. Now, what does it mean when we say that the Nefesh Elokis is awakened, or what does it mean when we say Nefesh Abamis is awakened, or changes, right? So it goes into another thing that we learned before, that is that both the Nefesh Elokis and the Nefesh Abamis have 10 powers, yeah? But the dominant force of the Nefesh Elokis is Seichel, is insight. Nefesh Elokis understands, internalizes, appreciates, is sensitive to godliness and so on, right? Obviously, it leads to loving Hashem, fearing Hashem, but the main idea is Chochmah in the Das, the main, right? Nefesh Abamis, on the other hand, is not like that. The dominant force of Nefesh Abamis is actually not Seichel at all. It's not Chochmah in the Das, is only there to serve the midas, only to serve the emotion. Nefesh Abamis is an animal, it's an impulsive, emotional being. And therefore, all it does is, it operates mostly on midas, right? So, which is the personality of a person.
But it runs.
Sorry?
But it runs. It can run.
But this running actually is more Nefesh Elokis running.
Oh, is it?
Away from the Nefesh Abamis.
Oh, okay. I thought it was taking the animal passions to...
No, that's the ultimate purpose. Yeah. It's not so much the running, it's more the passion. But running over there means running away from that because you're going to avoid it. You haven't transformed it. That's when Mashiach comes along, and we could have captured Nefesh Abamis by then. We transformed it. Okay. So therefore, what does that mean? It means like this. It means that the work that Nefesh Abamis does is mainly in midas, maybe in the emotional makeup of the person, right? And that's what the Omer is about. So Hashem says like this: I've done the work. I took out your Nefesh Elokis. Now I'm giving you 7 weeks to count it, right? And to work on yourself each week with another midah. See why it's weeks, not days, but right? So the first week is Chesed, next week is Gvura, it's first, and so on. And that's very, very hard work. That's what the Omer is. It's a time of self-refinement, right? Interesting. The Nefesh Elokis, the first day of Pesach, the first night of Pesach, is Isarusa till the Eila, that's kind of awakening from the which by the way is not only then, it means now also. There's tremendous Kedusha on the first night of Pesach. There's a word that they say, why we say Kadesh or Rechatz, right? Kadesh means make yourself holy, it means make Kiddush, but it means make yourself holy. Rechatz means to wash. And the first say that normally, spiritually speaking, one has to first wash off the dirt, the spiritual dirt, then you can become holy. Pesach night is different. Pesach night is an explosion of spirituality and godliness that you can right away become Kadesh. You become holy right away, and afterwards you work on removing the dirt, right? Anyway, there's that Kedusha on the first night of Pesach. The Seder is an amazing thing, but only affects Nefesh Elokis. It's interesting, what's the main mitzvah? What's one of the main mitzvahs in Pesach night? The 3 matzahs, right? The 3 matzahs represent the Chacham in Adas. Because that's the Nefesh Elokis. Nefesh Elokis is Seichel. It's the power of understanding. So it's the dominant force of the Nefesh Elokis being expressed and being released, so to speak, right? Incidentally, just parenthetically, that's the whole Seder type of stuff. The 3 matzahs is Chacham in Adas. And there's 6 things on the Seder plate, which is, and the way Rizal does is to place them in 2 triangles, which represent Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, and Yisod, which are the main emotions. And then the actual Seder plate, which goes actually, Chabad goes underneath everything, you actually don't even see it really, is Malchus. That absorbs everything, right? Because the ultimate goal is to transform all those 10 powers. Okay? But the first day of Pesach is mainly the Nefesh Elokis, mainly the Chacham and Das. Okay. This comes the second day. Hashem says, no, now it's your turn. You have to refine yourself. You have to start the process.
Which is why you only count from the second day.
Second night, right. And how does the counting work? What's it all called? It's called Sfirat Omer. Omer means a measurement of flour, right? And that's why it's all connected to the Korban Omer. So the second day Pesach, second night Pesach, they would harvest, second morning Pesach, they would bring the Korban, and it was flour. Now, what was their flour? So in Vayikra we know that a flour offering is called a milcha, right? Milcha. Flour offering. There are many different types of flour offering. Sometimes there was a sin offering, a donation offering. Often poor people were given the option to bring milcha because they couldn't afford animals, whatever the case is, right? But always, with the exception of two cases, always the milcha offering was wheat flour. The Omer was an exception. The Omer was barley flour, right? Why? That's the whole point. Because Omer says that, now we eat barley chon, but, or we do other things with barley. I don't know what we do with barley soup, I don't know exactly. But the Omer says that the wheat is Meichel Odom, it's the food of people. Right? There are 5 grains you can make bread with and make hamotzion, right? Or mazonosan. The truth is, we kind of use all of them in different ways, but we hardly ever use barley. Except for like cholent or stew or something like that, right? Like, I'll give you examples. I was thinking about this person actually, that someone's stomach needs a bit sensitive, so the spelt matzah is good. If it's really bad, they're celiac, so you get oat matzah, right? Because oat's one of the 5 grains. You can make matzah out of oat, you make flour out of oat, you make matzah out of oat, right? But no one ever offers you barley matzah, like, I don't know, it's not really good to make a bread out of, right? Because the Gemara says that chitim, wheat, is Michael Odom, the food of people, whereas Sa'orim barley is the food of animals, animal fodder. That's why the Torah says that you have to bring Korban Omer on the second day, because that's when work on the behemoth starts, right? First day is Adam, so it's matzah, it's different. Second day starts the work on the behemoth, the nefesh habamis, and that's why it's specifically barley flour. By the way, the other exception, this is just for interest rate, but the other exception when they bought a flour offering of barley was the soit, or the woman garnish bread. That's because her actions was very inappropriate. Her actions were actions of an animal, therefore she has to bring the korban out. Okay, but that's the idea, right? So therefore, it starts with the working on the nefesh habamis, and that's why it's korban omer and the animal flour. Then it goes for 7 weeks. After 7 weeks is Matan Torah. So Matan Torah means you've completed the 7 weeks, and then you've created like a oneness now between the nefesh elokis and the nefesh habamis. The whole person has changed, and now we're ready for the ultimate revelation of Hashem, which is Matan Torah. Now, truth be told, that this is the model that was happening with the Left Mitzrayim, but it was a model in capsule form, which means it actually didn't happen perfectly. Because we know that even the Matan Torah was a little bit of just a dilaila. They were kind of ready, but it was a very crash course of being ready, right? It's not that you can't change your nefesh habamis in 7 weeks.
After hundreds of years of being enslaved.
Yeah. So it's a model that one because really it's a model of the whole journey of the Jewish people till Mashiach. Matan Torah was a preview of Mashiach. So when I say you come to Matan Torah, you have to completely one, yeah, on one level, but the ultimate unification of that will be when Mashiach comes. That will be the ultimate Matan Torah, so to speak, right? Okay. Now, if we understand that, then we can go back to the pasuk. Let's go back to number 2. See how we understand? Noshcheni, Hashem draws me, right? Hashem draws me in the singular. That's Yetzias Mitzrayim. That's the first day of Pesach. Yeah? Because Hashem is taking me out. Me means the nefesh elokis. So we say to Hashem, you drew me out. That's what you did. Now it's our turn. What do? Acharecha marutza. We will run after you. We, the plural, we now do the nefesh elokis and the nefesh habamis. You get it?
Yes.
Right? Then, after that process is finished, then the king responds again. But this time, the king brings me means both, unification. It's back to singular. Now there's a oneness between nefesh elokis and nefesh habamis, and the king brings me into his inner chamber, which is the connection, ultimate connection, which happened in Matan Torah. Right? That's also why, going back now to the whole thing about the tzlukim, why Hashem calls the first day Pesach Shabbos. Why? Because it emphasizes this point. One of the big differences between Shabbos and Yom Tov, even in the way we say the bracha, actually, right? So we know on Shabbos we end off the middle bracha of the Amidah, we say Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadesh HaShabbos. We bless Hashem, He sanctifies the Shabbos, right? Yom Tov we don't say it. Yom Tov we call it Zmanim. Which means Yom Tov, right? We don't say Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadesh HaZmanim. We say Mekadesh Yisrael HaZmanim. Why? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, yeah.
Why? Because one of the fundamental differences between Shabbos and Yom Tov is this. The Kedusha of Shabbos has nothing to do with us. It was inborn in creation, every 7 days is holy, and that's it. We don't create the Shabbos anywhere. Okay, there is a Chassidus, a whole discussion about that even once it's created by Hashem, we can add to that Kedusha. Of course, we can contribute, but really, essentially, the Kedusha of Shabbos is completely Hashem made. That's why we say, Baruch Atah Hashem, Mekadesh Shabbos, we bless Hashem, He sanctifies the Shabbos. Yom Tov is very different. Do you do this daily mitzvah of Rama?
No, I don't.
No? You should consider it. Sorry.
Why do you think I've stopped writing to the Rebbe? Last time I wrote, he told me to do chitas. So now I can't add this to it as well.
So you should do at least join my WhatsApp. It takes 2-3 minutes.
Okay.
Focus the Rebbe campaign is really important. Okay, well, alright, so because you know that today actually starts the laws of making the calendar. Mitzvah making the calendar, right? So what's the mitzvah? All our festivals actually made by the Jewish people. Hashem wanted like that. Hashem gave us a mitzvah that we have to sanctify the moon. Okay, it was much more emphasized in the time of the temple when the time of the Mikdash, when they would actually wait for witnesses, and it was the whole thing. Every month had to be re-sanctified by the base of it, right? And we know there's two options that a month can have 29 days or 30 days, not always happen the same. There's even a Medrash which says about Rosh Hashanah that when Malachim ask Hashem, when are you going to judge the world? He says, I don't know, we'll see. Let's see when the Eden are going to make Rosh Chodesh, right? Let's go down, and we'll see, like, symbolic, that's the idea, right? It says Eden to make a mistake, and now we do Rosh Chodesh is all a continuation of the system that was made by Hillel, that was made by the Chazal, it's all made by us. That's why we say it's really Skus to the Tata. That's why we say by Yom Tov, we don't say Mekadesh Hazmanim. We say Mekadesh Yisrael Hazmanim. And Hashem sanctifies the Jewish people who then sanctify the Yom Tov. And then Hashem sends the Kedusha when we make the Rosh Chodesh. So when is Chometz forbidden? 15th of Nisan. When is Nisan? We have to make the Nisan. We have to make Rosh Chodesh. Right?
Except Hashem is saying the day we choose to make that is considered a Shabbos.
Yes, but in the Yom Tov itself, what happened on Pesach, the first day Pesach is kind of more like a Shabbos. Not in terms of the Yom Tov of Pesach, but in terms of what happened on Pesach. What happened the first day Pesach, which was Yitzias Mitzrayim, that was an exclusive Dilaila. Maybe now it's a little bit more of our contribution as well, but when it happened the first time, it was purely Hashem. Right? And Hashem in this passage is emphasizing the whole concept of Sfiras Omer. He was saying, the first you should keep Pesach, and then then you should brighten up the you meaning of Shabbat. You have to now do the work the day after the Shabbos. Shabbos was the Leila, so I did all the work and I spoke to you about Shalakis. And I ignited it. But now, it's the day after Shabbos, now you're going to start bring the carbon Omer, the animal carbon, and now you're going to start working on your own Nefesh Shabbos. Right, so that explains the whole idea of why it's called Shabbos, and also that Pasuk in Shir HaShirim, one of the first one is singular, then plural, and singular. Right? Just one final idea. So why 7 weeks? What's 7 weeks? So 7 weeks is because we know if you count the sphere every night, you know that there's not Chesed of Chesed, Gvura of Chesed, Tiferes of Chesed. And because they got every one of the 7 midas, each one is intertwined with the other 7, right? Now, that is true in how we should do it. In other words, in order to really refine the Nefesh HaBamis, and it takes a week, because we've got it actually not a day. Well, it can be symbolized by a day, it's going to be symbolized by a whole week. And in fact, Allah is going to count the days and the weeks, right? We know that. What's that? The idea is because the essential nature of the middus of the Nefesh HaBamis are that they don't integrate with other middus. Because Nefesh HaBamis is all based on ego. Ego means I'm locked in. If a person wants to chesed, there's no diluting the chesed or working with the guru. It doesn't work like that. right? Where you see it even more is more in children, right? Children are either, the world is either unbelievably wonderful or unbelievably terrible, right? The kid can, everything's great, and then when someone knocks the toy over, then everything's terrible. The whole world is a disaster, right? Because there's no integration. It's either complete chesed or complete gvura, or complete sadness or complete happiness, that's right? There's no integration, that's because it's based on ego, based on yeshus. The possibility of integrating midas is really, it's a humility thing, it's the ability to go beyond my personality and integrate something else in that, right? That integration process is very much, brought out in the 7 weeks of the Omer. That's what we go through a week. Every day we say it's chesed, it's not just chesed, it's chesed, gvura of chesed, it's first of chesed. We start gvura, we do the same thing. It's to work through the ego and say there can be integration, and the integration is...
Well, that's how you refine it, by integrating
Yeah, the refinement comes through integration. So refinement comes through bittul really, right? Because that's why it starts with matzah. This is the point also, right? This is the point. It's got to be, you can't have the Mesiras without the first day Pesach. First Pesach is the mitzvah of eating matzah. Mitzvah is total bittul. Once you get rid of the bittul, now you can start integrating. And now you can start refining the nefesh habamis and not being stuck in you, not being insistent that it's either this or that, all that kind of stuff, right? And that becomes the process of birur, of being mavara, refining nefesh habamis on the basis of bittul, and that gives room for this integration process to take place. That's what we integrated throughout the whole weeks. And that's a synopsis of Shviras Omer Opexis.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
All right.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. You put it on just for me.